Welcome back to Act 3 of Deconstructing Directing, Directing with Kindness. I'm Andrew Robler, the founder and archivist here, and if you've been following along, you know that this act isn't about theory in a vacuum. It's about applying the lens of reckless kindness to the real-world, sticky, in-the-moment situations that directors find themselves in. If you haven't, I encourage you to check out Scene 1 in this act, as it lays the theoretical foundation for the concept of reckless kindness that we're going to put into action here. Few spaces are as full of opportunities for both magic and mess as the rehearsal room. Rehearsals are where we build the container that holds the entire production process. That container can feel safe, structured, curious, and alive, or it can feel rushed, vague, passive-aggressive, or downright chaotic. In this scene, we're going to tackle some of the most common and often under-acknowledged pain points of rehearsal. Lateness, rescheduling, phones, food, side conversations, and general focus. If you've ever wondered whether you're being too strict or not strict enough, you're not alone. But here's the secret. Strictness isn't the most effective tool in creating collaborative spaces like a rehearsal room. Kindness is. We're going to break this scene down into 4 riddles, or cases, that we will examine in detail and then propose a response to. So let's start with riddle number 1, the case of the chronic lateness. This happens all the time. Perhaps an actor is consistently 5 to 10 minutes late, or a designer frequently joins production meetings halfway through. Perhaps you start to feel disrespected. The rest of the team begins to grumble and complain when rehearsals get held up and they're all there on time like they're supposed to be, and resentment builds. So what do we do as directors? Our internal check, see Scene 2, dealing with disrespect, might reveal that we are assigning a meaning to the lateness, assuming that the person who is late doesn't care, thinks that their time matters more, or that they're just lazy. The reality is that the person who's always late is probably just as, if not more, upset at themselves than you are. If you live in a big city like Houston, even if someone leaves work early and packs their dinner so that they can come straight to rehearsal, there's still a chance that an accident or stopped train will cause them to be late. If you're working with students, they may not be able to drive and are at the whim of their parent, guardian, older sibling, or friend who's supposed to pick them up. And some folks with certain neurotypes or disabilities experience what is called time blindness, which you might think of as sort of like dyslexia, but with time. I used to struggle with that a lot as someone with ADHD until I was able to get a diagnosis and start taking medication. Anytime I was late, I was mortified, and getting lectured about it, especially in front of everyone, only made it worse. So, what if we started with curiosity instead? Something like, hey, I've noticed you've been coming in late a few times. Is everything okay? Do we need to make an adjustment? Our goal isn't to excuse the impact. The tardiness does have an impact on you and everyone else. Our goal right now is just to gather information. Maybe they're juggling multiple jobs. Maybe they're neurodivergent and struggling with transitions. Maybe they thought the call time was flexible. A note here, especially for upstream directors that are working with volunteer actors. Try not to assume that everyone automatically understands the expectation of arrival times or the importance of them. A lot of new actors just assume that if they're running late, you'll start with a different scene or do something that doesn't involve them. Remember that mismatched assumptions are where resentment begins. The more specific you can be in your expectations, the more likely you are to avoid this issue. I also find that the bigger issue isn't tardiness, it's tardiness that isn't communicated. If I know someone is going to be late, I can plan around that to a degree. If I'm sitting there waiting for someone to show up with no clue when they will, that's a bigger issue. Establishing the importance of communication in these situations is incredibly valuable and can go a long way to reducing resentment due to tardiness as well. So now, once we understand the why, we can decide how to proceed. Reckless kindness means holding your own needs as equally important. So it's okay to say, hey, I know life is complicated, but we really need everyone here on time so that we can make the most of our limited rehearsal hours. Can we come up with a plan that makes that doable for you? In upstream spaces where people are working a job or going to school and have other commitments outside of rehearsals, there may be causes that are out of your control or the control of the other person. Taking time to understand that isn't indulgent, it's leadership. All right, riddle number 2, the mystery of the ever-changing schedule. In educational, community, and small budget settings, the rehearsal calendar often becomes a living document. Conflicts emerge, people get sick, someone's kid has a last-minute concert, another person's boss is making them work tonight. The athletic coach scheduled a mandatory practice on the same night as your first dress rehearsal. It's frustrating and difficult and honestly unavoidable in this day and age. So how do we balance kindness towards ourselves and the cast, and also to the individuals whose life events contribute to these issues? After all, sometimes we will be the ones who get sick or have a life event happen. It can be helpful to reimagine the rehearsal calendar as a shared tool rather than a set-in-stone contract, something the whole team helps uphold. I recognize that teachers may need stronger language when talking to parents that tend to devalue theater rehearsals compared to, say, athletics. But even then, making it clear that it takes a team to make a rehearsal calendar work is still valuable. So instead of just sending it out, talk through it at the first rehearsal. Something like, all right, this is our current plan. Life happens, but every change has ripple effects. So let's agree on how we'll handle changes so that we are all accountable to each other. Then we can establish and agree on a process together, such as a cutoff time for submitting new conflicts, a shared doc or group chat for availability updates, a default plan for making up missed blocking, communication expectations when lateness is unavoidable. The goal isn't rigidity, it's specificity. Specificity makes kindness easier to sustain. So when someone asks for a night off or another change to the schedule, we now have a way to assess their request. Sometimes we'll be able to say yes without any major impacts to the process or the other actors. And if not, we can acknowledge the issue and ask our collaborator, even if they're a student, to work with us to navigate a solution. Like saying, I want to support you, but I need to protect the group's time too. What's the middle ground here? Riddle number 3, the phantom of the cell phone. Cell phones are so ubiquitous today that it's hard to remember there was a time before we had them. And they're not just phones. I mean, we carry around miniaturized computers in our pockets. And they are often seen as the bane of every director's existence, both during performances and rehearsals. There's few things as frustrating as being in the middle of working on an emotional moment in rehearsal when someone's phone starts ringing with, "What does the fox say?" as a ringtone. Or if you're trying to give a note and the actor is sitting there texting, so you can't tell whether they're really listening to you. So let's start by asking this. What is our goal in terms of cell phones during rehearsals? Is the goal zero distractions, mutual respect, cultivating a sacred space? Have you communicated that specific goal to the team or just made a rule that says no cell phones? Often cell phones are seen as lifelines. Students in schools might be anxious without their phones for a variety of reasons, but not having it to text or call someone if there is an active shooter is one I hear from a lot of students. I work with a lot of artists who are parents with young children, often at home with another parent or a babysitter, and being available in case there are issues is a real concern for them. So a blanket ban may be hard to uphold and may cause resentment because without that specificity, assumptions get made about your intentions in setting the rule. But more than specificity, when we're navigating a topic that can be really emotional for our collaborators, inviting input into the agreements you will make together can be powerful. It might sound like this. We're aiming for an environment where everyone feels present. What boundaries around devices will help support that? I have this conversation at the start of most of my production processes, and while the cell phone agreement we reach is similar from show to show, there are always slight differences because the people in the room are different. Maybe you all agree to keep phones off except during breaks, or perhaps set designated phone zones at the edge of the room or outside the room. And even then, you can negotiate exceptions for emergencies or other concerns as needed. When people are part of creating the expectations, they're more likely to uphold them and more open to feedback if they fall short. And for the teachers listening to this applies to students just as much as adults, if not more so. Students are so used to being left out of these kinds of things that inviting them to help craft agreements like this can be a powerful sign that you trust them. Riddle number 4, the case of the unmemorized lines. If we've been directing for any amount of time, especially in upstream spaces, it's almost certainty that we have had actors who struggle to memorize their lines. This can be a major source of frustration for directors and fellow actors alike, as it slows down rehearsals and runs, makes it challenging to effectively clean and polish scene work, and ultimately can reflect poorly on the entire production if it's still an issue when the show is up and running. Directing with reckless kindness means that our first step needs to be curiosity and understanding. Memorization is not easy for many people, especially in upstream contexts where actors are often going to school or working a job full-time, sometimes both, in addition to attending rehearsals. This is particularly true if an actor is expected to be in rehearsal 5 to 6 nights a week, meaning that they spend their days at work or school or both, and their evenings in rehearsal. Finding time to memorize lines outside of that space can be immensely challenging, especially if the actor is less experienced and has not yet found a method for effective memorization. As directors who define our work by the flame paradigm, part of our job as facilitators, leaders, managers, and educators is to be conscious of how we create and maintain systems of both accountability and support for our teams. Many directors, especially in upstream spaces, set an off-book date, a point in the process where it is expected that actors are off-book, as a means of providing accountability for the actors. If that's all we do, however, we may be missing out on opportunities to be more effective in supporting our actors. Deadlines can be beneficial for some actors and anxiety-inducing for others, especially when they feel like they are struggling. A few options for how to address this with reckless kindness might be building in time for line runs or portions of rehearsals specifically for running lines with each other, or encouraging actors to step out of the room and run lines with each other when they're not in a scene being worked on stage. Checking in regularly with actors, both individually and collectively, to see how they feel about their progress and offering support if they would like it, or creating multiple off-book dates for different portions of the script. What is most important in addressing memorization issues is to minimize shame. Brené Brown defines shame as the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Something we've experienced, done, or failed to do makes us unworthy of connection. I have seen more than one director scream or yell at an actor who is not off book, and many more chastise them in front of the entire cast. The reality is that shame prevents vulnerability, and vulnerability is exactly what we need from our actors. As a general rule, actors who are struggling with memorization know that they are struggling. They can see everyone else being off book. They know how it feels to have to keep calling line over and over again. One of the least effective things we can do as directors is to contribute to them feeling worse about themselves. Instead, letting them know that we can tell that they're struggling and that we want to help them can be a powerful tool that answers their self-imposed shame, not with more shame, but instead with a reminder that they are still valued and that we still want them to be a part of our community. In the very rare instance that an actor is willfully not off book or is continuing to ad-lib and paraphrase after multiple attempts to help them and address the issue, there may need to be a conversation about parting ways with the production. And you can visit Act 3, Scenes 2 and 3, if you haven't yet, to learn more about how we might go about that conversation. But in 20 plus years of directing at all levels of upstream theater, I have only ever experienced willful disrespect of the text in the process by an actor once. Which is why I strongly encourage directors to not base our behavior on that possibility, but instead default to reckless kindness. Riddle number 5, the cursed side conversation. This one is the one I have the hardest time with, personally. As someone with ADHD, distractions are really hard for me at times. So when two actors are whispering off to the side or a designer starts chatting with a crew member during a quiet scene, for example, my focus can slip and become a major source of frustration. The reality is that not all side conversations are bad or even problematic. They might be clarifying something or reviewing something before their scene. They might be decompressing after a particularly challenging scene or celebrating nailing that really hard monologue. Sometimes it might be a coping mechanism to deal with emotion or physical discomfort, like being really cold in the room. So I don't ban side conversations outright, but like with tardiness, understanding why they're happening and then working together to find a mutually agreeable boundary can be a powerful tool. I explain to all of my teams that I have ADHD and that sometimes side conversations can be challenging. I might propose a few things depending on the context, like during runs, we'll ask that all convos happen outside the space. Or during scene work, if you need to clarify something with a partner, go for it, but please keep it quick and quiet. Sometimes we can even work together to create a way to identify when the side chats have become an issue, like setting a pause word anyone can use if they're struggling to focus due to the noise, or crafting focus norms together. Then we've set specific shared goals, and it's not about silence, but about shared presence. And none of these riddles have a single right answer, so it makes them riddles. The solution is almost always a mix of clarifying expectations, holding boundaries with kindness, and adjusting for the humans in the room. So if you're wrestling with these challenges, you're not doing it wrong. You're doing it. But kindness without specificity breeds chaos, and specificity without kindness breeds fear. Reckless kindness is what lives in the space between. It's the willingness to say, here's what I need, and what do you need, in the same breath. In the materials below this video, you'll find a rehearsal room toolkit that includes a sample first rehearsal norms agenda, scripts for addressing common disruptions with kindness, a printable rehearsal room bill of rights you can co-create with your team, and more. As always, all of this content is completely free, and I intend to keep it that way. But free doesn't mean free to make. So if deconstructing directing has helped you, challenged you, or made your work easier, I hope you'll consider supporting it through Patreon. Even a small monthly gift helps keep this resource available to the educators, students, and community theater directors who need it the most. You'll get some fun perks too, but more than that, you'll be helping sustain something built for all of us. And if giving isn't possible right now, that's okay. This work is still for you, and it always will be. This scene is part of a bigger conversation, one that continues in Scene 7, where we'll tackle the pressure cooker of Tech Week and how reckless kindness can survive when things get messy. Until then, keep being recklessly kind, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's complicated, because that's where it matters most.